Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Echo of Life. Let's start. There is a moment in life that does not resemble collapse. It looks like nothing at all. No crying, no shouting, no visible hurt. Only stillness. A kind of stillness that vibrates softly in the space behind your ribs where emotions once dwelled. You rise and the world appears washed of color. Not unhappy, not terrible, just muted. Coffee tastes the same, but it does not stir you like it once did. Laughter seems like something observed from behind a pane of glass. You say you are fine because in every practical way you are. You function. You show up. You offer smiles when expected. But somewhere underneath, you sense that something has drifted away. That is what emotional numbness feels like. It is not the presence of sorrow. It is the absence of everything. Psychologists describe emotional numbness as a protective response, a kind of psychological retreat that happens when the mind is overwhelmed. It is what the brain does when it has been wounded too often, felt too intensely, or carried too much for too long. It is like an overheated circuit that cuts power, not to harm the system, but to keep it from burning out completely. Yet the painful irony is that this protection can begin to feel like a cage. Because once you disconnect from pain, you also disconnect from joy. The wall you built to stop the storm also blocks the sunlight. I recall someone describing it exactly. It is not that I do not want to feel, it is that I have forgotten how. And that is the quiet tragedy of emotional numbness. It is not the loss of happiness, but the loss of aliveness. If you have ever felt that way, as though you are existing more than living, you are not broken. You are in self-preservation mode. The human mind is built to regulate emotion, to keep you safe. When feelings grow too powerful, too prolonged, your brain gently steps in and turns down the volume. It is not trying to harm you. It is trying to help you endure. But endurance has its cost. When you linger too long in this state, you begin to lose touch with the very things that make you human. Empathy, passion, even love. There is a psychological concept often called emotional blunting, linked to long-term stress, trauma, or depression. It is not always visible from the outside. Sometimes the calmest, most composed people are the ones who have closed off most deeply. They learned that emotion made them vulnerable. So they built a fortress, and after a while, they began to mistake those walls for peace. The truth is, numbness is not peace. It is quiet pain, pain that learned to hide. People who grow emotionally numb often do not notice it at first. It arrives slowly. They stop feeling excitement for what they once loved. They stop crying when something sad occurs, not because they are strong, but because the pathway to feeling has grown stiff. They might say, "I no longer care," not from indifference, but from weariness. Underneath that numbness often lies a story of stretching too thin, of heartache, of emotional effort that went unseen. It is the parent who held the family together for years until they no longer knew themselves. It is the person who stayed strong for so long, holding everything inside because they were taught never to unravel. It is the friend who always listens but never speaks. It is the child who grew up in turmoil and learned that feeling leads to pain. In time, the body learns a difficult lesson. If feeling equals danger, then not feeling equals safety. And so it adapts. But adaptation is not healing. It is survival. And survival is not the same as living. Most who are emotionally numb did not choose it. They were led there by repetition, by similar disappointments, similar betrayals, similar exhaustion that taught them caring too deeply hurts too much. They stop feeling not from weakness, but from a heavy kind of wisdom. Why open up again if each time you do, something fractures? Yet this is where psychology offers hope. Neuroscience tells us the brain is not fixed. It is adaptable, flexible, capable of renewal. The same mind that learned to close down can learn to open again. Emotional numbness is not a permanent sentence. It is a pause, a sign that your nervous system needs rest before it can feel once more. That rest often looks like stillness, but it is not the kind that restores you in a night. It is slow. It is gentle. It is uncomfortable. Reawakening feeling after numbness is like thawing after being frozen. It aches, tingles. It is both relief and pain at once. You begin to notice small things again. the way morning light falls across your desk, or how a song stirs something faint but true in your chest. Moments like these, fragile as they are proof you are coming back to life. To reach that point, though, you must first face an uneasy truth. Emotional numbness is not the absence of emotion. It is the holding back of emotion, and what is held back eventually rises. When you stop fleeing from your feelings, you begin to recall who you were before you grew weary, before you grew cautious, before you began mistaking numbness for strength. Because at its heart, emotional numbness is not a flaw. It is a scar, a mark from battles fought in silence. Peel it back gently without judgment or haste, and you will often find deep sensitivity underneath. The kind of person who feels everything but learned to hide it because the world kept saying, "You are too much." In fact, research suggests that those who describe themselves as emotionally numb often score higher in empathy once they start reconnecting. They are not cold. They are sensitive souls who went into hiding. And perhaps that is the real paradox. The most emotionally numb people are often those who once felt most deeply. They noticed everything, remembered every word, every tone, every unspoken shift in someone's eyes. They were made to connect, but connection became their source of hurt. So they closed the door, not forever, just until it felt safe to open it again. But time alone does not heal numbness, because numbness is not about time. It is about trust. You do not wake up one morning suddenly able to feel. You rebuild safety moment by moment until your heart finally believes it is okay to emerge. That is what many misunderstand. They think emotionally numb people are unfeeling, distant, detached. But the truth is, they are simply afraid. Afraid of being flooded, afraid of losing control, afraid of feeling everything at once after feeling nothing for so long. The answer is not to force feeling. It is to offer permission to feel without judgment, without demand. Because numbness melts in the presence of safety. Not pressure, not confrontation, just gentle, steady safety.
Okay.
If you have been living in that place, please hear this. You are not weak for going numb. You were trying to protect yourself the only way you knew. But your story does not have to end in emotional quiet. Somewhere inside, the part of you that once laughed too loudly, cried too easily, and loved too deeply, it is still there. It is waiting for you to knock on the door again. Maybe the first knock is not grand. Maybe it is only a whisper. I miss feeling alive. Sometimes people think numbness fades when life improves, when chaos ends, when work stabilizes, when heartbreak mends. But that is not how it works. Numbness does not come from the chaos itself. It comes from what follows. It is not the storm that silences you. It is the quiet after the storm, when you look around and realize everything has changed, and so have you. In that stillness, your body still remembers. Your nervous system still scans for danger even when none remains. That is the strange truth of emotional numbness. It is not a lack of emotion. It is a state of constant emotional protection. You are not empty, you are guarding the last pieces of your energy. Modern psychology calls this emotional avoidance, when the mind links feeling so strongly with pain that it begins to disconnect in advance. The result? Calm on the outside, restlessness within. You laugh at the right moments, nod at the right times, but it feels more like performance than presence. You begin to act alive instead of feeling alive. And at some point, you start to tell yourself, maybe this is simply who I am now. But it is not. It is who you became to survive. Emotional numbness often conceals a story of overwhelm, years of overstimulation, emotional responsibility, or quiet heartache that was never given space to be felt. For many, it is rooted in the idea that emotions are dangerous, inconvenient, or shameful. Maybe they were told, stop crying. Maybe they learned that showing fear or sadness only made things harder. So the body adapted, quieted what could not be understood. There is something deeply human in that, because underneath we all wish to avoid pain. We distract ourselves with work, with screens, with endless scrolling. We say we are busy, but what we often mean is, I do not want to feel right now. But feelings do not vanish when ignored. They wait. They gather in layers, until numbness becomes the only thing you can feel without shattering. And yet, this state, as lifeless as it seems, is not the end. It is a pause between who you were and who you are becoming. The psychology of recovery from emotional numbness is both fascinating and hopeful. Research in effective neuroscience suggests emotions are like signals, energy in motion, meant to guide us. When we suppress them, that energy does not disappear. It settles in the body. That is why numbness often comes with physical sensations. Fatigue, disconnection, mental fog, even aches. Your body is not betraying you. It is whispering, "I still remember." Healing begins when you start listening again. Not perfectly, not all at once, but slowly, softly, without force. You start by noticing. You notice when you want to shut down, when a song stirs something unfamiliar, when a memory flickers and you quickly turn away. Those are doors back into feeling. They are not threats, they are invitations. One of the most powerful things you can do in this state is relearn safety. Emotional numbness is not healed by chasing intense feelings. It is healed by restoring small, steady moments of safety. When the body feels safe again, emotions begin to return on their own. That is why mindfulness, therapy, and grounding practices can help so much. They do not force emotion, they build trust with the nervous system. You are teaching yourself that it is okay to feel again, that you are no longer in danger. Because numbness is the body's way of saying, "I do not trust one can survive another emotional wound." Healing is the process of learning that you can. This healing is not a straight line. Some days you will feel a spark. Some days you will go numb again. Both are okay. Emotional numbness does not vanish in one grand moment of clarity. It dissolves in fragments, in tiny moments of connection. The first real laugh in months. The first tear that does not frighten you. The first time you say, "I am not okay," and someone simply listens. In those moments, something inside begins to soften. Not because the world grew easier, but because you stopped pretending it was. It helps to recognize the subtle shapes numbness can take. Sometimes it appears as irritation, sometimes as apathy, sometimes as constant distraction. For some, it is perfectionism, the need to control every detail to avoid emotional uncertainty. For others, it is withdrawal, the quiet fate of someone tired of explaining what is wrong when they cannot even name it. Underneath it all is the same silent plea, "I just want to feel safe again." And perhaps that is where the real work begins. Not in trying to fix yourself, but in learning to be gentle with yourself. Numbness is not healed by intensity. It is healed by consistency. Small daily acts that remind your mind and body you are allowed to exist without defending yourself all the time. Take a walk without headphones. Let a song reach you without skipping it. Watch a sunset without reaching for your phone. It sounds simple, maybe even cliché, but these are the acts that rebuild emotional presence. Because numbness cannot survive where awareness grows. And somewhere in that process, something shifts. You begin to notice the texture of life again, the warmth of light, the sound of laughter, the gentle ache of nostalgia. It is fragile, yes, but it is real. And real always outweighs perfect. Psychology cannot fully explain the exact moment a person stops being a spectator of their own life and becomes a participant again. It is not measurable, but you can feel it. It is when the world stops being something you endure and starts being something you belong to. Even then, the goal is not to feel happy all the time. The goal is to feel honest, because emotional numbness often grows from the pressure to always be okay, to always seem strong, grateful, composed. Healing begins when you allow the full range of emotion. Joy, sadness, confusion, love, without labeling any of it as wrong. That is what emotional maturity truly is. The ability to be with what is without needing to escape. So if you have been living numb for a while, perhaps it is time to redefine what healing looks like. It is not about returning to who you were. It is about becoming someone who can hold more emotion, more life, more truth. Someone who is no longer afraid of their own depth. You do not actually need to find your feelings again. They never left. They have been waiting beneath the noise, beneath the self-protection, beneath the years of pretending you did not care. Maybe this time, instead of rushing to feel better, you can allow yourself to be confused, messy, uncertain, but real. Because numbness thrives in suppression, but it fades in authenticity. That is the paradox of healing. The moment you stop trying so hard to feel, feelings start to return. Not as waves that drown you, but as currents that carry you home. There is a beautiful term in psychology, re-engagement. It means gradually rejoining life after emotional withdrawal. It is when you start making eye contact again, when laughter feels less forced, when your reflection looks like someone you recognize. Maybe that is where your story is headed, not toward perfection, but toward re-engagement, toward life, as messy and magnificent as it is. You may not notice the change right away, but one day you will catch yourself smiling for no reason. You will feel its warmth spread through you, quiet and sure. And in that moment, you will realize the numbness did not just disappear. You outgrew it. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped needing protection from your own heart. You stopped seeing emotion as weakness and began to see it as proof you are still here. That quiet rediscovery of feeling is one of the deepest forms of healing a person can know. So do not rush it. Do not force it. Just keep living, even quietly, even awkwardly, until one day you wake and realize the silence inside has been replaced by something softer, something warm, something alive. Thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe my channel. For more update,